Well, greetings to everyone. Um, I'm on again with Nick Ward, slightly before it was planned, interesting enough, to talk about inheritance tax, which most people start thinking about when they're 78, which is no good at all. But we're going to park that. We're going to park that today and talk about something which is much more important and significantly much more frightening. But now, Nick, as you all know, is at the very sharp end, so he knows what's going on a day-to-day basis. I'm very good at telling you what's going to happen next year, but at the moment, that's not frighteningly relevant. What we need to do is talk about what's actually going on now in the trenches. And it's pretty bloody frightening, I can tell you. He's only just given me a relatively short briefing because it's only really popped up badly in the next year or so, in the last few weeks. And as always, it's banks, the problem of banks. So anyway, Nick, tell us, everybody, tell me and tell everybody exactly what's going on. And it's really quite frightening. Where are you going?
It really is, Godfrey. And yeah, we can come on to inheritance tax in another podcast, I think. But I want to talk today about Big Brother banking and highlight a really concerning trend about the banks this month when it comes to their treatment of the over 65s. And I've got testimonials here on my desk from at least 20 clients that can't get their money out in the last month, all of whom are over that age. We've got documented evidence. None of them are below the age of 65. All of them are. So this isn't just a rumor, Godfrey, that's been going around in the last 2 months. It is actually starting to happen right now. And eventually, like with all these things, sooner or later, it's going to hit all of us. So across the UK, the high street banks have quietly rolled out new restrictions on cash withdrawals for all those over the age of 65. And these haven't been clearly advertised as policies on their websites. They're hidden in internal risk management protocols that branch staff in all the banks have been instructed to follow. Now, if you're over 65 and you want to take out £500 or £2,000, depending on the bank, the transaction is going to be flagged as a vulnerability assessment. I mean, how patronizing is that? So where bank staff are basically going to question you and demand detailed explanations as to why you want your own money. And if they don't like your reason, they're just going to refuse the withdrawal. So Barclays back in March introduced a policy requiring additional verification for customers over 65. That's for £1,000. HSBC back in May set their limit at 500, and the others have now all started implementing it in June and July. So I've had multiple clients in the last month have their accounts frozen entirely, everything. If they refuse to tell the cashier what they're doing with their small amount of cash, or if they're not providing the right answer, that's it, you're cut out. This is their current accounts, Godfrey. They require them for day-to-day living. They contain all the direct debits and standing orders. And some can't even pay the remainder of their mortgages even. I've had a couple of cases of that. But the thing is, Godfrey, it's not only cash transfers. This is now happening to all older customers who are looking to do bank transfers as well. And it doesn't matter whether that's online, in branch, it's carte blanche for all of them. So people are having their accounts suspended and denied access to their money completely, and the banks are refusing to talk to them. They just won't get on the phone. A lot of these clients are having to spend hours and hours and hours on the phone, being cut off, calling back, having no reference number, speaking to a completely different person, causing them all manner of stress. And listen to this one, Godfrey. This is why I wanted to do this podcast so quickly. One client last week had a heart attack on the phone to the fraud department. I don't want to put two and two together. That's pretty concerning. Another lady a couple of weeks ago had the police called on her after being taken to the back office by the bank manager as she turned up with power of attorney over her mother. 2 coppers turned up half an hour later. I have never, ever, ever in my history of doing this ever seen anything as bad as this. They're asking inappropriate questions about family relationships, mental capacity, personal spending habits. It really is the Spanish Inquisition to create this atmosphere of intimidation to put people off going to the bank. And the other thing, Godfrey, it's not even consistent. People are being questioned differently from one branch to the other, even with the same bank. They're having different limits put on them from one day to the next. And the funny thing is, if you actually have a look at the legal requirements by the FCA for the banks, there is no rule saying that those over 65 are by default at risk. So this clearly, it's as clear as night follows day, really. This breaches the Equality Act, which prevents, of course, discriminating on the basis of age. And the other thing that we've been seeing as well as a consequence of this, which is rather ironic and worrying in itself, Godfrey, is that it's having a counterintuitive effect and is pushing people to take even riskier decisions now. One person, they got so inclined to take their money out, they deposited it with what looks to me like a fraudulent institution, as they felt completely trapped. Some new introducer bank or whatever it was. So I think the narrative and the mood music from the bank seems to be that, oh, it's protecting everybody from scams. And you know what? The seniors, they lose more money to fraud. They're more likely to lose £3,000 to a fraud. But these measures clearly show that older customers are being unfairly treated because, you know what? At that age, at the ripe old age of 65, they can't be trusted now with their own money. It is so patronizing. It's really the nanny state being introduced into the private sector. And you can see as well, I don't want to rant on, Godfrey, but the other financial institutions, the pension funds and everybody else, they're waiting on the sidelines too to see if they can do the same without the backlash. So the banks are leading the charge. But of course, the over 65s are the people with the largest bank reserves and the largest investments. So you tell me what the real reason for them really doing this is.
I mean, this is just quite extraordinary. We always knew that they were being difficult. You and I have talked about this a year ago. They're being difficult. And we sort of vaguely put it down, I think, to the fact that the last thing they want with the system of fractional reserve banking is lots of people taking out their money because it's money that they don't actually have. Let's say they comply with Basel III regulations and they've got a 10% reserve. 10% is still very light. And of course, the grey pound is the strong pound. Most people over 65 are the ones with the savings. Most people over 65 are the ones that want to do something with their money, either for their family, which we'll come on to on another podcast, with inheritance tax, so on and so forth. So this is very, very distressing. And of course, it can be, I'm 75, incidentally. So they probably think I'm almost virtually retarded by now. But the situation is, I know when the Inland Revenue last year made a very serious mistake. I couldn't get through to anybody. I couldn't, with all my experience and background, which is significantly more than poor old average Joe in the financial sphere, we couldn't do anything about it. And I spoke to my MP, David Davis. Sir David Davis is my MP. He's also a neighbour. And of course, I know him personally as well, as one as ever does know MPs personally, or politicians personally. It's not something one can really do. But this is now, let me just say this with David Davis, and I think with a good MP, this was an HMRC situation. He picked the phone up and sorted it out in 2 days, or his assistant did. It was fascinatingly quick because he has a hotline to the permanent undersecretary who is responsible for this kind of thing with HMRC. Now, this strikes me as a situation where a good MP, and my goodness me, there's pitifully few, a good MP could actually rattle a cage by picking up the phone to, I would suggest, the financial regulator, perhaps, I don't know, and perhaps you'll come on to that, To whom can you pick the phone up? Because I know that you can't get to anybody in charge if you phone a bank, or indeed BT, or indeed anybody else. It's all AI, and eventually get through to somebody. And of course, they don't know anything either. So what's the doing thing? Because there's one thing to warn everybody, and we're warning everybody now, and we've warned people before. But we've got to do more than warn people. We say, what is the doing thing, as we used to say at Asset Management? What is the doing thing? What can you do? Should they record their conversation? When they called in to see the bank manager, can they clip on their tape recorder on their phone? Would that be a good idea? And make sure you get a name. What is the man's name? And here's a recording. Do you mind if I record it? And what's your name? Because if you do not comply with my legitimate request, and hide behind regulation, which isn't actually there. If we don't name regulation, why are you stalling this? Because I'm then going to go to my MP at his surgery at the first possible opportunity, and I'm going to form a complaint. And one thing they don't want, very costly, as you know, the cost of a complaint. The hoops that they then have to jump through are enormous. So tell us what you're telling people. What's the best thing to do, and any anecdotes?
Yeah, you've already kind of preluded what I was going to say, Godfrey. You hit the nail on the head. To all the over 65s listening in particular, if you do not stand firm, it's just a slippery slope into becoming a second-class citizen. So yes, what is the practical action about how to fight back against this? In terms of how my clients have been successfully doing it and combating them. Like you said, Godfrey, document everything. Every question the banks ask you, the names of all the staff, a written record of any refusal, and the precise time of that. You're absolutely right. Show them you're informed and you're not a few mackerel short of a shoal and you're not going to be messed with. I had one client that detailed everything, and the bank had nowhere left to go. They knew their rights. They even recorded, like you said, the worst behavior from the bank, and they came out on top. So you have to play them at their own game. If a transaction is refused, the bank has to explain why. Yes, you're correct, Godfrey. File a formal complaint, because that has to be addressed and processed. So if you've been discriminated against because of your age, go to the ombudsman. As let's call a spade a spade. This is flat out discrimination. So the best defense really is to stay informed and not bow down to these hidden rules, because this really is part of a grand plan to normalize the restrictions on banks and to make people think this is just normal part and parcel of conventional banking. Oh, if I go down to the bank, it's going to be difficult. Well, why should it be? It's a prelude to the new rules coming from this government, which you briefly alluded to there, Godfrey, which I actually want to come on to next, as it's clear to see what the agenda is. So on top of all of this from the private sector, we'll also be losing control of our bank accounts due to increased surveillance by HMRC. So in only 20 months' time, Rachel Reeves has given the green light to the banks, who will now be required to collect all of our national insurance numbers and automatically pass them on to HMRC. So they can then take any tax due out of your account directly from your wages after amending your PAYE code. So that will enable HMRC to identify those of us who receive bank account interest in excess of the personal savings allowance, which is £1,000 for basic taxpayers and £500 for higher tax rate payers. £500. Of course, it drops to zero for additional rate taxpayers, so they get nothing. And according to the FCA, about 20% of us have savings of 25,000 or more. But in actual fact, that's obviously a government body. In actual fact, research from Starling Bank suggests that it's actually over 35% of us. So that's a whopping 12 million people that are going to fall into this. And some people might be saying, Godfrey, you know what? Why does this matter? I don't care. Well, HMRC will calculate what they think you owe. And if it's wrong, well, tough luck. you've got to fight them tooth and nail just to get it back. And you're not safe if you're retired either. If you've already retired, this is automatically going to be deducted directly from your pension income via your pension provider. So it's not even a form of stealth tax, Godfrey. It's just pure out and out direct plundering of your bank account. Now, the funny thing is as well, which is really nefarious and evil, this tax-free allowance has been in place since 2016, but it's been frozen since then, which makes us all sitting ducks and allows HMRC to dive in and collect any income tax on your savings for your average worker, your average middle-class worker. Interest on savings obviously increases, and more of us are slowly going to be caught in this digital trap. And they think by, I think it's 2029, another 2.5 million people are going to be dragged into this. So what they're essentially doing is using fiscal drag to trap even more and more people into HMRC's tentacles. Eventually, it's going to be everybody, because those thresholds are never, ever going to move up. And I think, I think it was Nottingham Building Society. They submitted a Freedom of Information request, and they reckon that eventually it's going to entrap at least another 3.5 million people. So if you've basically got, long story short, cut to the chase, Godfrey, if you've got 25,000 in savings, at an average rate of what, let's say 4.5%, you're going to breach the personal savings allowance automatically and trigger an income tax bill. And of course, the same things being spouted again. HMRC are claiming this is going to streamline the process for our benefit. We'll no longer need to fill out self-assessment forms. But we've heard all of this before. They're already taking 6 billion in savings from our interest. But what this amounts to is total loss of control of your bank account, as HMRC will have access to all of your information and all of your data. And like you correctly said, Godfrey, our tax codes, they're going to be adjusted accordingly with AI. Everything. And of course, HMRC don't have a great track record for getting it right. So if they're wrong, well, look, sorry, tough luck, money's already been taken, and you're going to have to fight tooth and nail to get it back. To get it back.
The interesting fact from this is, and we've said this before, we've warned people about this before. It is driving a coach and horses, actually through the principles of English law, the presumption of innocence. So the presumption that you owe HMRC tax, the presumption that you owe it is, and haven't paid it, is a presumption of guilt. And there doesn't seem to be any serious appeal procedure. They seem to do things like judicial review, and if I'll just cover that for people who don't know the difference, I've run into this a lot, as indeed you will have done. An appeals procedure is a balanced procedure where you can look at things to see, have you been fairly dealt with? Are you guilty or are you not guilty? A little bit like a court of law and a jury, or so far, and a judge, so on and so forth. A judicial review is an investigation to see if they have complied with their own procedure. And that's a completely different thing. And I draw attention yet again to the poor man who had his herd in Devon, his dairy herd, slaughtered to a single beast because he was slow with his paperwork and he didn't do the right things, and all that kind of thing. And the judicial review, the person who was in charge of that said, we totally accept that your herd is not infected. It's a pedigree herd, and it's in absolutely first-class condition at all. But we concur that the execution order of all your cattle was legitimate because all the rules were applied. And the trouble is, because we have now a generation, and even if you're 65, there's a generation who do not understand the concept of the principles of English law and quasi-autonomous government organizations, so on and so forth. Because if you have spent your life as a chippy or a joiner or a cabbie or a surgeon or a clergyman, you have not come up against this before. You don't know any of this. So you assume that when you go into your bank, that money is yours. That 50,000 or 100,000 pounds, it's not yours, people. It isn't yours. And that was under the Banking Charter Acts of the 1840s. It's not yours. And then if you add regulation onto that, your money in the bank isn't yours. I haven't kept money in a bank for years and years and years because I'm not stupid. And once again, I would draw your attention to Henry Ford in 1926. This is 1926. That's 100 years ago. He said, if people who knew how banking worked, they'd never put their money in a bank. So if you're watching this clip with me and Nick, if your money's in the bank, more fool you.
Yep. We're going to this neo-feudal type state, Godfrey. And what I hate to see is the private sector acting in cahoots as well with the government to do this. Because look, all the banks and pension providers are now going to have to take reasonable efforts to get our national insurance numbers, which is borderline harassment. And that's intimidating for the more vulnerable people and those who are meant to be protected. And again, all it's actually going to do is just increase the number of scams with people trying to get your national insurance number and everything else. It's going to have a completely counterintuitive effect. So what they're doing is accusing us of the very same thing they are guilty of. It's the same form of gaslighting we've come to expect it in every area of government. It worries me. It really, really does. And of course, they're also going to have the power to go back over the last 20 years of accounts and to scrutinize them too with a fine tooth comb. So what can you do to prepare in advance of these changes? What can be done? Well, don't leave too much money in the bank. You're absolutely right.
Of course, we also have a situation that people sort of vaguely know at the back of their mind. Your bank could be partially owned by the government since the 2008 crash, when a lot of the banks were nationalized. And of course, you've also got to remember that it's the government that grant your deposit taker's license. So they license you even if they're not shareholders in your bank. Yep. And then where is the free press who would defend you? Where is those programs that we used to see on the BBC, that Panorama or something like that, or whatever, where they would actually be undercover? Roger Cook, if you remember, he used to go around to dodgy car dealers. You've got to be very old to remember that one. Everyone.
Yeah, I was very young there, Godfrey.
But you see, that's where you need an undercover man. I'd like to see an agent provocateur on this go round and actually, let's say I want to buy £20,000 worth of gold, for example, from a reputable dealer, blah, 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 blah. And then just see how they stall that. And of course, I know you've had any number in the last few months of that kind of experience. And then if that was actually broadcast on media, on TV, or in the Sunday papers, it would be fascinating, and they'd probably stop doing it. But of course, they all piss in the same pot.
Of course they do.
Everybody involved in this is following the same rules.
Godfrey, what worries me, is how many people just say, "Oh, you know what? I just can't do it anymore. The banks have won. I'm going to give up." How easily so many people cave in and don't fight, because if everybody does that, it's over for all of us. It's over for everybody. Your freedom's my freedom. And people just cannot see it. That, oh no, the banks are making my life a nightmare. I'm just going to leave it there inflating away. They've won. So this is being labeled as progress for our benefit and our safety. It's the same old mantra time and time again. But ultimately, this is to prevent us accessing our savings, our wages, and it's a step towards the onset again of central bank digital currencies. It's the frog in the proverbial boiling pot. This is it's been ticked up another 2 degrees in the last 2 months. God knows where we're going to be in 6 months' time. That's really scary. It's obviously going to come for everybody. Again, like you said, the reason they're doing this as well, fractional reserve banking, the money doesn't even exist. It's not even there. If everyone tried to take it out, they realized the whole house of cards would come collapsing down. I know I've said this before. Let me reiterate it again, Godfrey. For every £100,000 that you have in the bank, you are covered for £26. 26. The 85,000 deposit protection limit is a facade. It's there to inspire confidence. It doesn't exist. There's no money in that to cover the risk that we're seeing in the banking sector. Do not let the government gaslighting you into thinking that it's actually there and they'll come to the rescue if the banks ever get into trouble, because they certainly won't. Be like Cyprus all over again. So people need to wake up, understand, pay attention to this type of thing. I know it's probably not the most sexy thing and it's rather boring, but this is your capital. This is your savings. And eventually they want the entire lot, or at least they want to control everything that you do with it. You won't be able to go on holiday. You won't and be unable to have your portion of red meat. You won't be able to have your wine. You won't be able to do this. You won't be able to do that. And the digital cage gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. It's already happening in China. Actually, I think they've got more freedom, Godfrey, in China than we have here right now in terms of what you can say and what you can do.
Unbelievable. Certainly, we've talked about this problem probably 12 months ago. And we've helped some people go through, and some people have just said they can't bear the stress, which I understand. I'm not decrying that. Stress, I've had stress with, when David Davis stepped in for me and sorted it out. It was a stressful time. It was only a few £1,000s. It wasn't the money. It was the fact I was dealing with an organization I couldn't get at. And of course, if those people, let's say if somebody came to you with £100,000, which I know is not unusual in your circumstances, if they decided to back off that and say, £100,000 this time last year, I don't know what would they be down? £30,000 now, probably.
Yeah, as inflation compounds, the government will say, oh, it's 2-3%.
And the spot price of gold, what's that done in the last 12 months?
Oh, there you go. That shows you the true inflation rate, because it's not actually the value of gold going up; it's the currency going to nothing. That's what it is. And there's no limit as to how much they're going to print. That's it.
And an otherwise sensible ex-MP emailed me the other day. A lot of people say the Bradbury pound. I don't know whether anybody's heard of the Bradbury pound, but in 1918, that's something the government issued, was so they didn't have to borrow the money or create a bond. They could do the Bradbury pound. So they printed a Bradbury pound note, and Bradbury was the name of the governor of the Bank of England at the time. So they didn't have to pay interest, but it was just paper. It was just inflationary. So paper money is crashing as we speak. Inflation is what you know it is, because everybody watching this clip knows full well what a pint of beer cost last year, or a joint of beef cost last year, or your shopping bucket, people, or your motor car. They know this. So your money is degrading in front of your eyes. And of course, if it goes digital, and your money is digital already, it's only created if you want to borrow £20,000 for a car. Your bank clerk creates it by typing it into a machine. So it's all fake. It's all fake.
It's all a fugazi, as they call it, Godfrey. Completely fake, the whole thing. It's just digital contracts designed to keep you down and on the hamster wheel, churning away and bringing on more debt, extending that debt cycle. All the while, those at the top get filthy rich and everybody else is left at the bottom. That is the ultimate plan. It is a wealth grab over everything. And there is no end to the voracious and just the greedy appetite. It's vociferous. They just want to own the world, and they'll never stop. These people are psychotic. The central bankers, I mean, of course, we've talked about this many a time, but the Bank of International Settlements is obviously the one that owns all the major central banks, of course, as well. This is where it's coming from. Ultimately, they want a one world government. They want one banking system and everybody to be on it. And look, we're hopefully a long way away from it. But look, actionable points. If you're over 65 and you face this, take notes, record every single thing and fight back, because this really is going to be a shift in the pension rate. If they can't get away with this, then we might have a bit more time. You might still have time to get on the life raft. But if they do, every other financial institution is going to do the same thing. And the over 65s are the first casualty.
Do what the central banks are doing globally. If you're watching this clip, if you've got a bit of savings, only gold is money. Only gold is money, as J.P. Morgan said, I think it was in 1912 or something like that, historically. Only gold is money. And you must hold it in your greasy little hand. You have to hold it in the palm of your hand, and that's money. And if you want to know who the biggest, cleverest people on the block are, of course, it's the central banks. What are they doing? They're buying gold. Do what they do. Don't do what I say. Do what the banks are doing. That's the only way you can protect your wealth. And I'll just close on this now, and I've said it a million times, I don't mind repeating it. A gold sovereign in 1908 would buy you bed and breakfast in every European capital you like and a very good hotel. It will today, because they're worth about £600 plus, and it will in 100 years' time. If you don't hold gold coins in your greasy little mitt or in your tea caddy, you don't hold it. Some bank clerk you don't even know, probably AI, is having control of your life and your family and your children's lives. Don't let it happen. Don't let it happen. And don't be afraid to pick up the phone if you really can't get any further to your MP, because he just might be a good guy. And he will know who to phone direct with the financial regulatory authorities, and he can get straight to the top, which you can't. They won't let you get through. And go to a surgery. If they really do not give any ground at all, and if it's close, if you want any help from that, I will help. Or if you've been stopped from buying gold in any way, you'll see my website all about gold. It's all about gold. It's in absolute detail. And you will find, of course, Nick's connection there. And if you want to buy gold, you can talk it through with Nick. He's heard it all before. He knows exactly where all the bodies are buried, and he at least can point you in the right direction, as indeed I will if you email me. And I'm very happy to help if I can. This is a really important thing, and I feel very deeply about it. And as you can see, we both of us can't believe that this is happening. And I'm a lot older than Nick, and it certainly hasn't happened in my lifetime. I was born in 1949. I haven't seen anything like this, nothing like this. And nobody watching this clip has seen anything like this, because there has been nothing like this. Well, once again, Nick, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Godfrey.
We'll come back, everybody, to talk about inheritance tax, because there's a budget coming up. And these people, we live in a kleptocracy. These people will steal your children's money as well, and sometimes grandchildren yet unborn. They will cover that in a few weeks' time. So thanks again, Nick.
Pleasure, Godfrey. Yeah, take care, and I'll speak soon.
Thanks.
Bye.
As most of you know, my work is very heavily independently research-based, and I get my information from all over the world. It would help if you press the subscribe button and the little bell next to it, because the more subscribers I have, the more likely it is that international independent research institutes will share their material with me. It's most helpful, and then of course I automatically share it with you. So surprise, won't cost you anything. Thank you very much.